Told through the story of the Catholic Church in Boston and two of its leaders, Cardinal Cushing and Cardinal Medeiros, there was a bustling struggle regarding racial violence. Catholic support in Boston for the civil rights movement was weak in the 1950s and slowly increased during the 1960s. The American Catholic Church tended to be ambivalent in its support for integration. The bishops generally supported the ideals of equality and racial justice, but were hesitant to take any steps to implement integration during their time. In the 1960s, Boston's Catholic Cardinal Cushing took a stand on racism and, quote, showed an early sympathy with blacks. He had a lifetime membership with the NAACP and made his opinions clear from the beginning. Cushing epitomized an open-hearted and accepting cardinal of the Catholic Church. In the St. Patrick's Day parade, an NAACP float was violently targeted against by angry white people. As a supporter of the NAACP, Cushing was truly distraught by the horrible actions. As the author of A Prayer of Brotherhood, he wrote, quote, "Our open minds and hearts to all the oppressed and afflicted." Cushing openly conveyed his feelings toward integration and equality for all. As cardinal, his attempts to provide equal opportunity showed through in his actions and his writing. Cushing was Cardinal of Boston from 1944 to 1970. He had a stronger connection with the people of Boston because of his Irish descent and ability to relate with his followers. He was constantly involved in activities and outings that gave him an opportunity to personally connect with Boston citizens. For example, he went to public places and events such as Bruins games in an attempt to raise money. He was always out somewhere making appearances and trying to fund money. He needed to become mindful of the risks in angering whites who were against integration because of their role in his ability to successfully fundraise. Despite his attempts to provide the church with funds, he ended up adding a lot of debt to the church. His loss of control and influence in the church began to affect the outcome of the busing movement and integration. Cushing was well liked by many, so when he handed off his position to Medeiros struggled to live up to his standards. There was a sharp contrast between Cushing and Medeiros. While Cushing used his power for fundraising and establishing wealth for the church, Medeiros was not well fit for the same circumstances. Medeiros' different circumstances regarding his background created identity issues that separated him from the predominantly Irish society. Medeiros became Cardinal of the Catholic Church in Boston after the death of Cushing. He was a man of Portuguese descent, which made him an outsider among his followers. He was the first non-Irish Cardinal in 124 years. Cushing showed the faith he had in his chosen successor when he stated, quote, he is a fine man, one of the finest members of the whole American hierarchy. I welcome him to the Archdiocese of Boston. However, others were not so open, and priests brought back the old rhyme used to describe an Irish oppression at the hands of Boston's English in the 19th century. Quote, "Hail Mary, full of grace. The Irish are in second place, but with a new meaning. The Portuguese had been thought of as, quote, third-class Catholics, and the Irish were not happy because this placement of Medeiros overstepped this boundary." Medeiros admitted from the beginning that, quote, personally, he feels too weak and too small for the task entrusted to him by the Holy Father. He was a man who dressed formally and seemed uncomfortable and rigid. He never thought that he had the capability to deal with Boston. Because Medeiros did not believe in his abilities to lead the Catholics of Boston, the people could not believe him either. His position made him nervous, and he often appeared uncomfortable. His His serious personality prevented him from fully connecting with the Irish people and did not help his popularity as a cardinal. He was constantly afraid of ostracizing one group of people because he did not want to lose their support. When a federal judge ordered there to be busing in 1974 and the city descended into violence, Medeiros did not take a strong stand, although Protestant and Jewish leaders felt the decision was just and normal. Publicly, he made confusing statements like, quote, "I am opposed to busing and I always have been. I didn't say I believed in forced busing or that I was against it. And how to plan the integration of the city. That's beyond me. I have no competence there." He also said things like, quote, "Busing may not be the most desirable way to integrate, but it's all we have right now. As long as people keep calm and quiet, all will be fine." As Boston was becoming more and more violent, Medeiros did not assert any authority. The moral violence of the city was effectively silent. Medeiros' lack of leadership was also exhibited in his attempts to deal with the fact that many whites were leaving the public schools and enrolling in Catholic schools. Medeiros claimed that these schools were not allowed to accept these students, but when they did anyway, he did not enforce the decision. Instead, he simply sent letters urging the schools to stop. He was powerless in this situation as Boston citizens enrolled their children despite his claims. His weak position proved again that he lost influence among Boston citizens and in the church. The integration and busing crisis throughout the 1960s demonstrated declining influence of the Catholic Church. The declining impact became more prominent during Medeiros' time as cardinal, but was present during Cushing's as well. If Medeiros had made a strong statement for his position on racism, it might not have even made an impact on the fight against segregation. The Catholic Church and attempts from the cardinals were being ignored during this time due to the separation between blacks and whites.